Shalom. 365. 365 days since our world was forever changed. On October 7th at 6:30 a.m., the first sirens pierced air across Israel, marking the beginning of an unspeakable tragedy that shattered our sense of peace and security. We all remember where we were when the sirens rang out, when we were woken up with the news of the attacks, when we turned on our TVs and saw the unimaginable scenes of Hamas pickup trucks in Sderot, when we started to comprehend the scale of the massacre. The sirens marked the end of our sense of safety and the start of unimaginable loss. The memories of that day are seared into our hearts, and they will forever remain a part of our collective consciousness. On that awful day, 75 members of our community, students, faculty, and staff, were murdered or fell in battle. 10 were taken hostage, and hundreds made homeless in their own homeland. Over the next month, I attended close to 40 Shiva condolence calls to families of students and staff, hearing heartbreaking stories of academic and personal dreams of students cut down in the prime of life. Sigalit, the mother of Ori Chernyakhovsky, who was gunned down at Nova, described the incredible support and love that Ori's friends have shown her over this past year, and the ways in which Ori touched so many lives. Your friends come to visit, calling me the mother of us all. They bring flowers for my birthday, just as you did for years. The garden your friends built at the university is beautiful, filled with color and life, though it now stands as a silent tribute to your memory. I often hear the words you used to answer the phone. The place to fill a dream, how can I help you? You helped so many, my love. Even those on the margins felt seen by you, and you gave without making them feel indebted. You were there for everyone, just as you were for Noah at the festival, just as you would have been for anyone in need. My friends and colleagues in the global Ben-Gurion University community, thank you for joining us today as we come together to remember, reflect, and support one another. This broadcast serves as a space to unite, not just in our grief, but in our shared strength and hope for the future. Over the next hour, we will honor the memory of those we lost and recognize the challenges that have shaped us as individuals, as a university, and as a nation. From every corner of the world, we are united by a common thread of grief, resilience, and the hope that together we can overcome this darkness. A warm welcome to everyone tuning in from around the world, numerous countries. Thank you for being here. We are joined on screen today by groups representing the global BGU family in the United States, Canada, South Africa, and France, and we will hear from them later in the program. Today's program reflects the profound impact of October 7th. We'll hear from BGU staff who will share personal stories of loss, followed by a short memorial film, after which we'll light memorial candles together. We'll highlight the resilience of our academic community, speaking with researchers who rose to the challenge, and hear from our global community about how this day reshaped their reality abroad. Finally, we'll look to the future through the eyes of a student reservist who has just returned from Gaza. Our first guest today is Kochi Aharon, Public Relations Director at BGU Sde Boker campus. A committed community member both at BGU and her hometown of Ofakim, Kochi tragically lost her youngest brother, Roni, during the October 7th attacks. Kochi's story is deeply intertwined with that of Ofakim, a quiet desert community of 40,000 people that became the site of intense, prolonged battle as Hamas pushed deeper into Israel. Local police officers, armed with little more than pistols, stood as the first line of defense. Roni, a detective, was one of those brave policemen. When rockets from Gaza signaled the start of the attack, he ran out of his house, leaving his young family in their safe room, and rushed to protect his community, ultimately paying the ultimate price. Kochi joins us today to share her personal story and to represent the resilience of the people of Ofakim. Kochi, I know it's not simple. Really, thank you for being with us today. And I know what we're going to talk about is deeply personal because it's your brother's story, it's your story. You were there on that morning when everything started. Yeah. Can you start by sharing who Roni was, both as your brother and as a dedicated officer?
Roni was my baby brother. He was born when I was quite old, and I was like his second mom. He was an amazing boy. He was full of life, full with friends, and he was not spoiled. Although he was the little one in the family, he was always the person that helped everyone, supported, hugged, kissed, or just smiled. He was very dedicated to his work, to his family, to his kids, to his wife, and to the people of Ofakim.
So Ofakim, not many people know it. It's a small, quiet place, and it found itself on the front lines on October 7th. Can you describe what happened during those intense hours, the role Roni and his fellow officers played in defending the city from the attack?
Actually, I think that the entire Western Negev was saved by the police. I'm always saying that the police was the thin blue line that protected that day Israel. On that morning, we heard sirens, and we are used to sirens, and usually we go outside and see the missiles and the Iron Dome. But after that first sirens, they become more frequently. So I called my sister-in-law, Roni's wife, and I told her, don't worry, the kids were with me that morning. We went to the shelter, to the mamad, to the inside shelter, and everything is okay. And then she said to me, there is an infiltration of terrorists to Ofakim, and Roni is out and he's not answering his phone. I tried to call him several times and he didn't answer. My mom tried to call him several times and he still didn't answer. We felt that something is wrong. During that time, when Roni heard the gunshots from his home, 400 meters, he
literally went running out from his home.
He went
by foot.
By foot with a pistol, left his screaming wife saying to him, don't leave me alone. And he didn't think twice. He started screaming to people, go inside your home. There is an infiltration of terrorists to Ofakim, close the door. The last person that Roni entered to her home was Rachel and her late husband David. Unfortunately, a group of terrorists that came from the roundabout shot and killed Roni. Roni, and among Roni were a lot of heroes from Ofakim that were civilians, were policemen that went outside that morning and actually stopped the slaughter that started in what we call the Goren Street. Everything finished at the Tamar Street with a battle that everyone knows about, the battle for the hostages of Rachel and her husband. But Ofakim lost that day 51 people. 52 total if we count Rachel's husband. Another 2 soldiers were lost in the battle in Gaza. Ofakim doubled the number of casualties. It was one of the worst days of my life, and it was one of the worst days of Ofakim. But we decided that we will not show just the grief, that we will cherish the heroism of those people, and that's what we are doing.
You know, clearly, without Roni's actions and those of his friends, the massacre would have been much larger, and we don't know where the terrorists would have gotten to. But with this pain in telling the story, why has it been so important for you in sharing his story? You've been doing it here at the university with any guest that we've brought to you. You've been incredibly open. Why is this so important to you?
I don't want Roni to be forgotten. I don't want his actions and what he did to be forgotten by the Israeli society, by the Jewish world, because this is, I compare it to the Maccabim story. This is a group of people fought against terrorists that came with ammunitions, with RPG missiles, with rifles, with grenades, with bombs, and they managed to save the entire city. Before they faced those heroes that we call them the heroes of Ofakim, they already killed 20 people. Just figure if they were not facing those heroes, what could have happened.
Kochi, thank you so much. In the backdrop of all of the things that went wrong on that day, the work of the police force stands out as a shining example, and it's so important that your story is told. And we all will be always remembering Roni here at Ben-Gurion University.
Thank you.
Please stay with us now as we welcome Professor Dana Vedder-Weiss. Professor Dana Vedder-Weiss is the head of the Department of Pedagogy and Teacher Training and the Teacher Education Program at Ben-Gurion University. Professor Vedder-Weiss will talk about her student, Yasmin Zohar, who was brutally murdered on October 7th, along with her husband Yaniv and their two daughters, Keshet and Tchelet, in Kibbutz Nachal Oz. Dana, thank you so much for being with us here tonight. I know it's not simple. You knew Yasmin not only as a student, but as a person deeply committed to education. Could you share more about who she was?
Yes. Yasmin was a brilliant, exceptional, committed MA student, teaching assistant, and researcher whose education just ran naturally in her vein, in all these official roles that I mentioned, but also in the community work she was involved in. For example, in what ended up being the last year of her life, she talked a lot about her involvement in putting together this amazing program, Bar Mitzvah program, for her son's class. After she was murdered, we asked her students, peers, colleagues, the teachers she worked with to write about her for her son who survived the massacre. And they all talk about her inspiring presence, about what a role model she was for them in this rare combination of a thorough, critical, brilliant mind combined with this kindness, humility, and compassion. So Yasmin's loss is not just a loss for a family, for a friend and for us, but for the entire education and research.
You know, as academics, we do become involved in our students' lives, and we're used to that. But Yasmin's death, and all the deaths were tragic on October 7th, were awful. But the Shiva particularly stands out because an entire family was massacred, and her 13-year-old son survived because he had gone out for a morning run and managed to hide. I deeply remember that, the Shiva, and not knowing what to say. How have you, as an individual, as a person, as her mentor, processed this profound loss, both personally and professionally?
I found out about her murder the day after, October 8. We couldn't contact her in October 7 until we were able to find someone for the kibbutz after they were evacuated, that she told us what happened about everything. But it took more than a week for the funeral to take place because it was so difficult to formally identify all the four bodies. And the funeral, as you said, was like no words can describe a four bodies funeral. And for me personally, the first few months I wasn't able to do anything except for grieving for Yasmin and other people that I knew. I had 3 combat soldier sons out there fighting, so I was managing that as well. The only thing that felt meaningful was completing Yasmin's work. She wanted to study teacher emotions in their work with parents. As I said, she was both critical about the school and the education system, but also very concerned with teacher emotion and the well-being. And so we felt like we needed to complete this mission for her. And so she managed to finish collecting all the data for her study. So together with other people from my research group, we divided the work, and for several months we were working together on her study. It was comforting to do it together. It felt meaningful to do it for her.
As academics, this is, to a certain part of our immortality, is the research we leave behind. But you're in a field, particularly, that not all of the academics around the world, to put it lightly, came out in support of our tragedy on October 7th. We've seen colleagues, universities around the world that were very slow to show empathy for what we've gone through. And you've been sharing Yasmin's work at international conferences. What message of hope do you get from being able to share her research, her results, in the year following her death?
After Yasmin was murdered, two international educational research organizations issued a memoriam in Yasmin's memory, which was on one hand touching, but on the other hand upsetting, because the message was so neutral. They neglected to mention the horrific Hamas attack. It was a tragic death.
She died in a vacuum.
Yeah. And so I felt like we needed to increase our visibility as top excellent Israeli researcher and tell the story of Yasmin family, October 7, and the research, academic work that she did and we continue. And so when I speak about her, I show her photo, I tell the story in international stages. I hope that our colleagues can develop a more complex understanding overview. And for example, last month I presented it in Italy, and this chair of the session, an Italian scholar, came on stage with tears in her eyes and spoke very warm words after she heard this story. And so for me, this was the most significant moment of this entire conference.
Dana, thank you so much for both bringing Yasmin back to us, for sharing your personal story. I know this isn't easy being here this evening thinking about it. We talked about it earlier, but it's been really important for me to hear it again, to reconnect, and I'm sure for all our viewers around the world. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Kochi and Dana, along with all of you, to join us with a special video honoring members of the Ben-Gurion University community we've lost since the October 7th attack. We'll be following this by a joint lighting of memorial candles. Each time I see all those pictures, all those names, behind each one is an incredible, tragic story of their deaths, and I just cannot get used to this. We gather here today to remember those we've lost, lighting these candles as symbols of their light, which will forever shine in our hearts. May their families and friends find comfort in the love and strength of this community. As we stand together in unity, we pray for healing, for justice, and a future filled with acts of kindness and peace. May their courage inspire us, and their memory be a blessing. May we never forget the sacrifice they made, and may we honor them by living with purpose, with compassion, and with a commitment to a better tomorrow. Yehi zichram baruch. Amen. Yep. Yeah, I see around the world people are lighting candles with us tonight in memory of those who are lost. And even today we suffered another loss in Beersheba, where a young woman was murdered by a terrorist at the central train station in Beersheba. She should be the last loss of life. From personal stories of loss, we now turn to how our academic community has shown resilience in the face of adversity. I'm pleased to introduce our next guest, Dr. Nir Schlesinger from the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. Many of you saw pictures of Nir teaching his class on machine learning while he was wearing combat fatigues with his weapon slung nonchalantly over his shoulder. You see, Nir also serves as an armored operations officer in reserve duty in Gaza, and he would get released from the front lines to give his lectures at BGU and then head back to his base. Against this difficult background, Dr. Schlesinger has recently been awarded a very prestigious grant from the European Research Council for his groundbreaking work on the intersection of machine learning, signal processing, and wireless communications. He brings a unique perspective to both his academic and his national roles. Perhaps fitting to Nir's story, he couldn't be with us here in person tonight as his unit received an emergency call-up just a few days ago. Once again, he has donned his Army greens and is currently stationed somewhere in the north. We met briefly earlier today for a brief conversation, though the reception was a bit challenging. Let's watch.
Shalom, Nir. Thanks for being with us. And I have to say that I didn't think 365 days after October 7th I would have a new experience. But here we are talking with you where you are somewhere north of Beersheba. And you've had quite a number of unique experiences, balancing your role as a researcher, your duties as an officer in the reserves, and we see this as an evolving story for you. Can you share what has been like for you, particularly in terms of transitioning from military service to teaching to doing research, and now we see back to the reserves?
Well, the last year has been a roller coaster. For me personally, but I think for everyone. And my personal experience started in October 7th, like most of us, where I got summoned after waking up on a Saturday morning, after having breakfast with my daughters, and all of a sudden the alarm started, and I received a phone call, and I went. I didn't know that I'd have to be gone for 4 months, but that's what happened. At some point, when the academic year started, I was contacted by the head of my department, by Professor Boaz Rafaeli, and he asked if I can come and teach. Specifically, there was one course that I was giving. I was the one building this course. I had many students enrolled, and I was inclined to agree. Fortunately, I had the possibility to do so. I had the support of my superiors in the military. And as it turns out, the distance from Gaza to Beersheba is about 45 minutes drive, which is ridiculous.
Or a 45-second missile, as we know.
Yeah. So I was able to not pull back and support the students and come once a week to campus and it was a great relief for me. It was a drop of sanity, I would say, recalling what normal life is like. And it was like that for, I think, 7 or 8 weeks, where I was coming to campus to give class, meeting with my students, and then hopping back to my military unit on the outskirts of Gaza. And that has been a crazy ride, and I honestly thought it was back to some form of normality, but not that many days ago, I received a similar phone call, and here I am again in a very similar but different situation.
Just in a different ecosystem.
Yes, it's a different experience, I think, this round compared to the previous one, and it's not the feeling of horror and the feeling of agony that accompanied us, at least last October, but who knows, time will tell. So it is a different feeling this time.
Nir, what's really incredible is that even during your service around Gaza, not when you were at the university, your identity as a teacher, as a lecturer, still was really part of what you do. I heard that you actually were giving lectures to soldiers who were waiting to be deployed. Is this true?
Yes, it's actually a quite a funny story. There was a lot of waiting time, and at some point, some of the soldiers surrounding me that were that were also recruited students from Ben Gurion and from other universities, they heard that I'm a professor for electrical engineering. And one of them asked if I don't mind giving them, some lectures. It was great experience for me, I must say. It allowed me to practice on my new course, and it was a bit of sanity to talk about research, to talk about science, and do it in a very strange and unnatural environment. But it was a great experience. And honestly, now that I'm back in a very similar position, I see those guys are here asking me if I can give those lectures once again. People saying that they miss my lectures. Can I give them one more time? I don't know, depending how long we'll be here.
Well, let's hope it's not very long. So, but during your service, while you were teaching, you also were teaching students who were also soldiers. So what was that like, having to deal with so many? In engineering, we had thousands of students who were also having to do their reserve duty at the same time. What were those experiences like?
Well, I think at some point in class, I came and at first I felt that it would be strange that I would drop by. I mean, I had to carry my rifle everywhere. Then I come into class and I see that half the students are also carrying some kind of, are also in a very similar position. I think it was important. I think it was important for both students who were drafted for reserve and for students who were not drafted for reserve. I think it provided me with some better understanding of the experience that they are going through, because I can pretty much see both from their side as soldiers and both from the academic side as a professor. And I think it was not an easy experience, not for them, not for me, but I sincerely hope that we managed to give them both skills that we were aiming for and not to hold them back despite their intense military service.
Yeah, so I know how close you are to your students, and particularly your own research students. And what's adding to your amazing story is that in this year of war and resilience, you were awarded the very prestigious European Research Council grant for your research. And as we are primarily a research university, I can't leave without just touching briefly on this. Can you give us a research for dummies, a machine learning for dummies, as they say, quick explanation about what your research actually touches on?
Yes, I'm interested in artificial intelligence, but not for language, not like ChatGPT. I'm interested in using it to build communication devices, to build sensoring devices. And I do believe that for these kinds of applications, the different types of artificial intelligence that is needed. It's a different type of algorithmic foundation. And this is exactly the kind of stuff that I'm working on. And I believe that this has great potential, and there are so many domains that can benefit from a new form of flexible, lightweight, and signal-oriented artificial intelligence. Is that for dummies? I don't know, but I guess that's the way I think of what I'm doing.
Well, thanks so much, Nir. You know, you really epitomize the Ben-Gurion spirit, both taking care of the country, taking care of your students, and thinking of the future research and how that's going to affect all of our lives. We pray and wish that you and your soldiers come back safely from this tour of duty, and that next year we can only be talking about your research. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Danny, and thanks everyone in BGU for their support throughout this crazy time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we couldn't have scripted that any better. We didn't know that he was going to be in Lebanon when we were doing this, planning this event. It's also a fitting moment to express our gratitude to the hundreds of staff members of BGU who were drafted this past year. Despite the immense challenges of this time, they have continued their work with unwavering commitment. And now, before we go on to the next moment, I just want to again thank the over 1,000 people from around the world who are with us, really from every country around, from all corners of the world, both on Facebook Live and on Zoom. I hope you are, I don't want to say the word enjoying, but obviously we see that you're finding this meaningful to be here with us. Thank you for sharing with us tonight. And so now we turn to another important story of resilience and collaboration between academia and the medical field. I'm honored to introduce Dr. Galit Katavisas-Levy from the Department of Medical Engineering at Ben-Gurion University, along with Dr. Navot Givol, head of the Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery Unit at Soroka University Medical Center, and a lecturer in our Faculty of Health Sciences. Hello, Navot, Galit. Together, you represent the critical connection between groundbreaking research and life-saving medical care. Navot, can you take us through the early days of the war at Soroka University Medical Center? What kind of injuries were you seeing from the beginning, and how did you realize that you needed help beyond the traditional approach that you use every day?
I may say we've seen injuries that we didn't see before. That's the main thing. We see brutal and very excessive injuries. In my specialty, we are the second line. We're not let's say, in the front line of life-saving, but we deal with mainly reconstruction after. And the collaboration with Galit started before the war, and during the war we understood that we can, by collaboration, give better solution to our patients. And it started in forensic dentistry. They had
forensic dentistry?
Yes, they had to have some mouth opener. They had to have some mouth opener to identify the casualties. So we together with Galit, we designed a special mouth opener. We printed it in Galit's laboratory, and we sent it to Shura, to the forensic lab that identified all the casualties, and we could print it in dozens. So that was very helpful. And from there, the rest is history.
So Galit, did you ever imagine that 3D printing would play such a central role in helping surgeons better understand and treat patients? Can you give us like an example of how your research is having these life-changing influences?
In my lab, we are developing new biomaterials for medical applications, for using 3D printing technology. So this is what we are focusing. We are focusing on creating new materials for new implants, for better and innovative solutions for medical solutions. And one of the examples that we are doing now is we are not doing implants, but we are doing pre-surgical planning. So we're printing an anatomical model, and this is an example. This is an example of a wounded soldier. As you can see off the skull, I will bring it up. And maybe, Navot, you can say a couple of words about him, about the injury.
It's very, very difficult mid-face fracture, and we had to operate for about more than 10 hours. And
so this isn't the real skull here.
This is the injury.
According to the CT scans. We're pretend according to CT scans.
So you take a CT scan of the injured soldier.
Yes.
And before you plan the surgery, Galit prints an exact model of the skull?
Yes. This is the print of the injury.
And then we operated and we printed again to see. We have here the things we need to fix, or as we call it, the residual deformities that we want to fix on second or third surgery, and this is enable us to see all the details that you can miss on a screen.
Without this technology, in the past, how would you have been able to treat this type of wound?
Not as bad as good as we do now, and it would take us much longer.
And what can I ask how this soldier is doing?
Fine.
Wow,
I won't say more because it's privacy, but he's doing fine.
So I think it's probably one of all of our dreams in science that we actually can see the fruits, the impact of our research. Galit, has this at all changed your approach to the way you do your research in an interdisciplinary matter?
I think the fact that we have only a road between our two institutes, and it's make it very easy for us.
Because right where we're sitting, that's
exactly.
Soroka Hospital, about 200 yards right there.
Exactly. I went to Soroka 3 times today to make the pre-surgical planning and to print models for new operations. So it's very easy for us to collaborate and to find new and innovative way to solve problems and to use our skill and knowledge in engineering and material science and to apply it actually to medical problems.
Navot, did you ever imagine when you were doing your medical training that you'd be working with the material 3D printing scientists?
No, I didn't. For me, it's like a dream come true because we can do research, we can examine really new materials, we can get an advice, even clinically, try this, try that. Try this material, maybe in this angle, maybe in that angle. It helps us enormous, and we dream of educating new generation. We will get the engineering and the medicine together, and 3D medicine will be a kind of a tool that comes along.
This is just amazing. Thank you for sharing your story that so epitomizes the BGU story of the remarkable things going here. We talk about that the secret power of Ben-Gurion University is what I call the power of coffee, the ability for diverse researchers from faculties that don't seem naturally to come together, but if you can meet together to drink coffee, you could do amazing things and save and affect lives. Thanks so much, and continue the incredible work. I would like to take a moment now to revisit some of the moments we shared this past May during our Board of Governors meeting. Please join us in this video that captures the spirit of unity and resilience from that special event.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better, some have places at the moment, with lovers and friends, I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I love them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. And these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I loved you more. In my life, I loved you more.
What an incredibly meaningful time it was for our global community to come together. And we look forward to meeting you all here next year. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our amazing community members. As the reality of the unimaginable loss of life set in, it also became evident that our community was confronting significant financial challenges. In response, hundreds of you from numerous countries generously contributed more than $12 million for the university. This incredible support has been vital in assisting those whose homes were destroyed, offering financial aid to our student reservists, and providing individual tutoring and psychological services. It has also allowed us here at the university to duplicate classes and lectures, ensuring that no student would miss out on the academic year due to the war. So now we turn to our communities overseas. While the events of October 7th deeply impacted those of us here in Israel, they also sent ripples across the globe. I'd now like to turn to both Gary Debody, the outgoing chair of the A4BGU board, and Andrea Goren, the incoming chair of our American Association. Gary and Andrea are both joining us live from New York. Gary, as you pass the torch to Andrea, I want to take a moment to thank you once again for your dedicated leadership and the tremendous impact that you've made during your tenure. Andrea, as you step into this role, it's especially meaningful given that your father, Alexander of blessed memory, also held the same position, thus continuing your family's legacy. Gary and Andrea, given your deep connections to Israel and BGU, how has this past year impacted your community, and what challenges do you foresee in the year ahead?
Thank you, Danny. First, I just want to tell you how grateful I am having had the opportunity to work with you and Andrea and the many amazing volunteers and professionals who support the work of this remarkable university. I find the support for Israel through Ben-Gurion University, using Americans for Ben-Gurion University, is a great way to support the Negev, to support innovation and entrepreneurism. It really is driving the future of our world, as we just heard about from a number of the professors. October 7th was a real wake-up call for me. It really hit home with friends and family living here. Beyond the extreme shock and sadness from the senseless murder of innocent lives, I feel like this gave many of us around the world the resolve to stand up and be counted. We support the people of Israel, who we all know are peace-loving and have once again been unfairly pushed to have to defend themselves against this existential threat, as they have on and off since the reformation of the country in 1948, after many centuries of being displaced from our ancestral homeland. Over the past year and going forward, I feel like the Jewish people are more united and have a new resolve to make sure the lives that have been lost in this conflict are given real meaning by leading to a new and lasting peace. I see a very challenging conflict over the next few months. It's frightening, and sadly, more lives will be lost. But thanks to the strength of Israel its allies like the U.S., and the nations in the region who want to build peace and prosperity, we will prevail. The collaboration in the region is strong. Many nations want to work with our favorite university because they know it's good for all of us to not be isolationists, unlike the axis of evil. The people who are on the wrong side of this fight, who are using their people as pawns instead of serving the good of their people, will continue to see changes to their leadership until we get to a tipping point when we will celebrate that better future we are all looking forward to. Israel Chai. Andrea?
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Danny, and everybody on the call. For me, the past year, I guess in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, there was this big feeling of just a little bit of guilt and helplessness. I have my sister and her family who live in Tel Aviv, a lot of extended family, a lot of friends. And here was, in New York, going about life as normal. I would call her basically every day for maybe 6 weeks or so. And that, was quite helpful for me, hopefully for her as well. And then Gary and I and Doug and a bunch of staff from here in Canada and Switzerland, we went on this really amazing and invaluable mission to Israel and Ben Gurion and the Negev in general in January, where we got to spend time at the university with students, with professors, with staff, with local officers, some of the people we saw today, and it was really incredible to witness, despite everything that happened, how people in Israel have a very strong sense of community, can-do attitude. I see a problem, I'm going to try and fix it. And I went away really very inspired and heartened, and really that feeling is really one of the big reasons why I'm so honored and happy to be taken over from Gary. I think as we look ahead, we all need to stand up, be counted, do whatever we can. However big or small, to try to build the future that we want to live in. So, thank you, everybody. I'm really looking forward to this experience and to spending more time with everybody. Am Israel Chai.
Thank you, Andrea and Gary, for standing up and being counted. Now I'd like to forward the same question to Tanya Golan and Liora Hessen, Chalutz leadership graduates from Cape Town, South Africa. First off, Tanya and Liora, I'd like to thank you again for the incredible hospitality you showed me when I visited in August. So how has the past year impacted the South African Jewish community?
Thank you so much for asking us to be on this call. We're really honored to be here and thoroughly enjoyed our time under the terrible circumstances when we were there in April. So, for diaspora Jews, October 7th, I think, really changed all of our lives forever. We realized that Jews around the world were uniting in pain and sorrow for what had happened in Kfar Aza and Kibbutz Be'eri, and for the hostages that were taken and the innocent lives that had been lost. But we realized that we truly are one nation, scattered around every corner of the globe. And even though Jews make up a fraction of the world's population, we seem to make an inordinate impact that causes admiration, but simultaneously anti-Semitism and hatred. And from the tip of Africa here in Cape Town, all the way to America, Australia, Europe, we've witnessed this unity which has brought us together under these awful circumstances. South Africa itself seems to be relatively subdued and safe for Jews to carry on and practice their Judaism as normal. But despite this, there's a very large Muslim community in the Western Cape, and the ANC, being our ruling government, has strong affiliations with Hamas and the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which goes all the way back to apartheid and to relationships with Mandela. So our government has shown its sympathy through the ICJ with Hamas and now with Hezbollah, and we are exposed to this on a daily basis, so much so that as we drive through certain areas of Cape Town, we see Hamas flags flying. We see a building in the center of Cape Town that has been painted from top to bottom in the Palestinian flag colors. And there are constant marches. Even as recent as yesterday, there was a very large gathering in the center of town. And these protests continue on our beachfront, which is a very Jewish area as well, where we see thousands or hundreds of cars driving past, waving their flags, holding signs, shouting from the river to the sea and accusing Israel of genocide. And we are definitely facing terrible anti-Semitism over here.
And it's also interesting and worrying to note that since the 7th of October, there's been a significant rise in anti-Semitic incidents. Our South African Jewish Board of Deputies has reported a surge in hate speech, with 63% of the 182 anti-Semitic incidents in 2023 occurring after the attack. And this includes, as Tanya said, mass protests. Yesterday, it was reported that there were about 35,000 people at a protest just 2 or 3 kilometers from where many of the Jews live, down the road from us. But despite all of this, there's been beautiful acts of solidarity within the broader South African community, within the Cape Town community, notably peaceful demonstrations, and tomorrow night there's going to be a beautiful ceremony here commemorating October the 7th and the victims. We had Douglas Murray here, which was amazing. So yeah, I think that. And
while most people are not standing on a podium declaring their Jewish status, we are also not hiding it. And our chief rabbi, Warren Goldstein, has been remarkably outspoken, both locally with his attitude towards the South African government, but also on the world stage. And we get to wear our dog tags and our Magen Davids. You can see Laura and I have both got Magen David rings and our yellow ribbons. And we remain proud Jews, trying to support and connect with Israel in any way that we possibly can all the time. So I'm Israel Chai, and thank you again for giving us this opportunity.
Sure. Thank you, Tanya and Lior. My visit was very eye-opening to see the vibrancy of your community. And I have to just tell our viewers that when you were here in April, you experienced firsthand the first Iranian missile attack. And so you understand firsthand what we're going through. Thanks so much for being with us, and thank you for your leadership. So now I'd like to move to our next guest, Andrea Friedman, who is the CEO of BGU Canada. Andrea, BGU Canada held a remarkable event in Toronto on December 3rd, where over 1,000 people showed up to show solidarity with BGU. How is the role of your community in supporting Israel and BGU involved, and what initiatives have you seen from your local community that actually give you hope?
Thank you, Danny. Obviously, December 3rd was an extraordinary evening for Canadian Jews and for the BGU community. The gala was extraordinary and would have been extraordinary as a standalone event, but something even more remarkable happened that evening when Canadian-Israeli philanthropist Sylvan Adams announced his absolutely unbelievable lead gift for the Way Forward campaign of $100 million. And we're so proud as Canadian Jews and strong supporters of BGU that the lead gift for the campaign is coming from a Canadian-Israeli philanthropist. But your question is broader, I think, than just December the 3rd, and really how Canadian Jews have experienced and reacted to the horrific events of October 7th. And for me, I'm going to go back to the night of October 9th, which was when the Jewish community of Ottawa, as did many other Jewish communities across Canada, gather in solidarity with the Jewish people. And I remember watching 45 minutes before our solidarity gathering was scheduled to begin that every seat in the auditorium was taken. And so people without seats stood and they lined the sides of the room, they lined the back of the room. And when there was no more room for people in the building, they lined the corridor. And when there was no more room in the corridor, they gathered in an empty gymnasium just to be together. And when the fire department said no more people are allowed in the building, they simply stood outside the building in solidarity. And for me, October 9th set the tone of what we have to do as Canadian Jews. We have to demonstrate our solidarity, and we have. We have to raise unprecedented sums of money for BGU and for our ancestral homeland, and we have. We have to tirelessly push back against anti-Semitism that we see on our streets on a daily, if not weekly basis, and we do, with our university students at the forefront of those efforts. So when you ask me what I'm hopeful about and what I see changed, it really comes down to our university students and how proud I am of how they've stood up to anti-Semitism on campus. And I know that what we experience here in the diaspora is just a fraction, one iota of the pain and suffering that our Israeli brothers and sisters are experiencing. And our role is to demonstrate to you that we care. What I've learned from the past year is that Lev Echad, one people, one heart, has never been more true. And Danny, our hearts are with you and with the Israeli people.
Much, Andrea. We feel that, and I just am so proud of everything that you're doing for us. Our final guest from abroad is Madame Danielle Biederman, president of our French Association in France. Danielle, along with her late husband Maurice, founded French Friends of BGU a half a century ago. Danielle is joining us live from Paris. Danielle, we've seen an incredible outpouring of support from global communities. And just recently, you organized an event where I had the pleasure of attending together with over 150 people. Can you share any personal stories or moments from this past year where you felt a deep connection between your community and BGU and Israel? Can you please, I think there might be a problem with the computer. Just check that you're off of mute. Okay, now we hear you. Wonderful.
On October 7th, the French Friends of Ben Gurion University, like so many others around the world, both within and outside of Jewish communities, was deeply shocked. With Ambassador Eric Danon, our honorary president, and the committee, we quickly decided to organize a support mission to the university. When we arrived, we met with students and staff, and it was overwhelming. The emotional weight was immense as we listened to the stories of students and doctors recounting their experiences of that day. We were moved by how they managed to convey their energy and resilience to us. Returning to France was rather difficult, and with this strong wave of anti-Semitism that doesn't seem to stop for the moment. With the university board, we experienced a strong sense of unity with BGU associations worldwide. Your visit, Daniel, to Paris in September, along with the major gathering we organized, where religious, media, and political perspectives were shared, solidified our commitment to action. Today, we come up on the 1-year anniversary. We mourn what has happened and is continuing to happen. But we also hope. Thanks in part to Ben Gurion University and all that it does for its community and the IDF, that hope is still alive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and to all my dear friends in Paris along with you. No doubt that our students have been a source of hope, a beacon of light in these dark days. From the very morning of October 7th, our students rose with courage, with resilience, and with compassion. They have stood strong ever since, embodying the spirit of volunteerism that is the essence of Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. In the early days of the war, 7,000 of our students were drafted into the military, and many of them are still serving. One of them is Amir Peres, a graduate student in urban studies who served, yes, listen to this, 180 days of reserve duty since October 7th, and just recently returned from fighting in Gaza. Amir, welcome. Thanks for being with us today. You know, after finally coming home, I'm sure being here with everyone is not the first thing on your mind. But can you share with us what it was like? You were one of the first soldiers to go across the border in Gaza. And can I take you back to that day? Can you just help us to understand what that was like for you?
Yeah, well, the first moment in Gaza, I was very scary, mostly scary. I was like picturing always the worst scenario in your head, always thinking about what's going to happen and how you can be ready for what's coming to you next, how fast you're going to meet enemy. But also you think about everything you have at home, like your family, your friends, you appreciate your life. It's all over your head. It's running through, and you trying to survive the moments and to be strong, because you know you will need this energy.
So, in such a moment, what kept you motivated, both as a soldier and a student?
Yeah. So as I said, you always picture in your head what you have at home. You appreciate your life. You like picturing what you're gonna do in the future. You also think about how bad is the situation. There was a very bad situation. You think about all the hostages, all the people who murdered, people I know. You think about my friends who fell with me, who fight with me and fell in the battlefield, and unfortunately didn't came home alive with me. It's all coming through your head. It motivates you. It give you and it give you a lot of reasons to come back home and to build your life, to be a student, to learn, to reach heights, to get achievements, and just to live your moment.
Amir, when we were making the painful decisions of whether to open up the academic year or to keep waiting and to keep waiting and to keep waiting, once the year opened, there was a question of whether the social life of Ben-Gurion University would return. Would the famous parties go on? And while the students here were reticent, were worried about it, one of the messages we got from reservists was, yes, do the parties, because when we come back, we want to live the life. Was that what you were feeling also?
Yes, with no doubt. I just came home and of course, I remember all the situation. It's still happening, it's still sad, but you so appreciated the moment. You know, unfortunately, sometimes you experience moments that you regret not doing things and not having fun. And also, you think about how you build a community, about fearing together, like living the same people, the same time. You happy, and you know how to be sad, but also you need this energy. You need this energy. You need to remember there's always hope, and you need to build it right inside your body.
How have you managed, just a last question, You know, you're showing a huge dichotomy here of both being scared and of being hopeful, of being broken and of being strong at the same time. How is that helping you or your fellow students moving forward, realizing that you could be two things at once?
I will not lie. This is hard. This is not the easiest thing to do, to live both lives, as a soldier, as a warrior, and as a student, where your troubles are like to fail a test, and you know, it's so different, and this extreme changes all time. You can get used to it, but also you know that the world outside is not waiting for you, and is not waiting for this war to end over, and you need to keep up. You need to do your best to keep up.
Amir, I think everyone who's watching will agree that you embody the essence of the DNA of Ben-Gurion University. All of our supporters are so proud of you, of your friends, of your fellow students. And if there was anyone who was trying to understand why we do what we do in supporting Ben-Gurion University, you have shown us why, in spite of everything that's going on. As David Ben-Gurion said, the future will come from the Negev. And with young people like you, the future of Israel is still incredibly optimistic. Thank you so much. As we come to a close, I'd like to thank all of our guests from around the world, from the United States, from Canada, from South Africa, from France. Thank you for being with us here on screen. I'd like to thank all of our guests for sharing their stories, and for each of you for being here today. Though we are here to mourn, let us also be reminded of our strength, our ability to rise, rebuild, and stand together in the face of tragedy. David Ben-Gurion's words, as I just said, the future will arise from the Negev, take on new urgency. Together, we will continue to shape a future, not only where such horrors never again find a place, but where the youth of Israel thrive and build new remarkable realities here in the Negev. We continue to hold the hope in our hearts for the safe return of all hostages and soldiers, and for brighter, more peaceful days. I look forward to seeing you all here for our Board of Governors event next May. Early registration closes at the end of this month, so be sure to save your spot. Thank you again for joining us.